When the United States makes a move like this, it's almost never random or reactive in the moment. It's the result of layers of planning that most people never get to see. Every deployment, every shift in military position, is tied to intelligence assessments, satellite surveillance, regional activity, and predictions about what could happen next. What might look sudden to the public is usually something that has been building quietly for days, sometimes even weeks. Think about how modern military strategy works. Nothing is done without purpose. Troops aren't just moved because of tension headlines. They're positioned based on potential scenarios. What if a strike happens? What if retaliation escalates? What if allies get pulled in? What if critical routes or bases are threatened? So when forces start appearing closer to a region like Iran, it's not about what is happening right now. It's about what could happen next. There's also a psychological aspect to this kind of positioning. Moving forces sends a message without officially declaring anything. It signals readiness, it creates pressure, and it forces other countries to think twice about their next move. It's a way of saying we're prepared without actually saying it. And in global conflicts, that kind of silent communication can be just as powerful as direct action. Another important part is timing. These moves usually happen at very specific moments, when tensions are already high, when another conflict is unfolding, or when intelligence suggests a shift is coming. It's rarely coincidence. It's more like a chess move, placed exactly when it can have the most impact, even if no immediate action follows. And if you look at past situations, this pattern repeats. Before major escalations, there's always this phase where things start to move quietly. Equipment, troops, naval forces, all getting into position. Not for show, but to reduce response time if something triggers a larger conflict. Because in these situations, speed matters. Being late by even a few hours can change outcomes. So when you see this kind of movement, it's not just activity, it's intention. It reflects planning, anticipation, and preparation for multiple possible outcomes, all happening behind the scenes while the public is only seeing a small part of the picture. When rapid response units start getting deployed, it immediately signals that the situation is being treated with a higher level of urgency than usual. These aren't regular troops being rotated in for routine presence. These are specialized forces trained to move fast, react fast, and operate in high-risk environments with very little notice. Units like airborne divisions are specifically designed for scenarios where timing is critical, where decisions have to be executed within hours, not days. What makes these forces different is their readiness level. They're not just stationed somewhere waiting. They're constantly on standby, equipped and prepared to deploy at a moment's notice. So when they actually get activated and moved closer to a potential conflict zone, it suggests that the window for something happening is no longer distant or hypothetical. It means planners are considering the possibility that things could escalate quickly, and they don't want to be caught off guard. There's also the flexibility factor. Rapid response troops are not tied to a single mission. They can secure key locations, support allies, evacuate personnel, or respond directly if a situation turns into active conflict. That versatility is exactly why they're used in tense moments like this. It allows decision-makers to keep multiple options open without committing to a full-scale operation right away. Another layer to this is how these deployments affect the pace of events. Once rapid response units are in position, the entire dynamic changes. Reaction time shrinks dramatically. What might have taken days to respond to can now happen within hours. This creates a kind of pressure on all sides, because everyone knows that any sudden move could be met with an immediate response. And beyond the physical presence, there's also the signal it sends globally. Other countries, allies, and adversaries alike understand what it means when these units are deployed. It's seen as a clear indication that the situation is being taken seriously at the highest levels and that the margin for error is getting smaller. It raises the stakes without a single official announcement being made, shifting the atmosphere from cautious observation to active readiness. When naval forces start repositioning, especially in sensitive regions, it's never just about movement on a map. It's about control, presence, and influence. Warships are among the most strategic assets any country has, and they're deployed with very specific objectives in mind. Whether it's aircraft carriers, destroyers, or support vessels, each one plays a role in shaping what happens next, even if no direct action is taken. One of the biggest reasons behind moving warships is to secure critical areas. In regions near Iran, that often means keeping an eye on key waterways, trade routes, and choke points that are vital not just for military purposes, but for global commerce as well. If anything disrupts these routes, it doesn't stay local. It affects oil prices, supply chains, and economies worldwide. So, positioning naval forces in these areas is about maintaining control and being ready to respond if those routes are threatened. There's also the power projection factor. A warship doesn't need to fire a single shot to make an impact. Just its presence sends a message. It shows capability, readiness, and intent without escalating into open conflict. Aircraft carriers, for example, act like mobile military bases, carrying jets, weapons systems, and thousands of personnel, all positioned in a way that allows rapid response to any sudden development. Another important angle is support and coordination. Naval forces often work as part of a larger network that includes air power, ground troops, and intelligence systems. By moving warships into position, it creates a forward operating environment where everything can be coordinated more efficiently. It shortens distances, improves response times, and allows for faster decision-making if the situation changes. Timing again plays a critical role here. These movements usually align with rising tensions or ongoing conflict nearby. When you see warships getting closer to a hotspot, it's often because planners are anticipating scenarios where immediate presence could make the difference, whether it's deterrence, protection, or direct involvement if needed. And then there's the signaling aspect. Other nations are always watching these movements closely. They analyze routes, numbers, types of ships, and positioning patterns. It becomes a silent form of communication, one that doesn't rely on speeches or press statements. Instead, it shows intent through action, shaping how others respond without a single word being spoken. What makes this situation more intense is that it's no longer just political tension or verbal warnings. It has already crossed into active conflict territory. When two sides move from statements to actual strikes, everything changes. It shifts the environment from uncertainty to direct confrontation, where each action immediately triggers a reaction, and the space for calm decision-making starts to shrink. In the case of Iran and Israel, this back and forth isn't just symbolic. Airstrikes, missile launches, and targeted operations indicate that both sides are willing to act, not just threaten. And once that line is crossed, it becomes much harder to control the pace of events. One strike leads to retaliation. Retaliation leads to escalation. And suddenly the situation starts moving faster than anyone originally intended. Another layer to this is how these actions are calculated but still risky. Each side tries to send a strong message without triggering full-scale war, but there's always the chance of miscalculation. A strike that goes further than expected, a target that causes more damage than planned, or even a misunderstanding of intent, all of these can push things to a level that neither side initially planned for. There's also the involvement of indirect factors. Conflicts like this don't exist in isolation. There are allies, regional players, and global powers all watching closely and sometimes quietly influencing the situation. Support, intelligence sharing, and strategic backing can intensify the conflict without always being visible to the public. That's why even limited strikes can carry much bigger implications behind the scenes. At the same time, the frequency and pattern of these exchanges matter. A single strike might be seen as a warning, but repeated action suggests something more serious. A pattern forming, a cycle that's becoming harder to break. It creates a situation where both sides feel the need to maintain pressure, to not appear weak, which only adds to the intensity. And when conflict reaches this stage, it starts affecting more than just the immediate area. Airspace risks increase, nearby regions become unstable, and global attention shifts rapidly. Markets react, governments reassess their positions, and military forces in surrounding areas start adjusting their readiness based on how the situation evolves. When the United States becomes involved in a situation like this, it immediately shifts the scale and significance of everything happening. What might have started as a regional conflict between two countries suddenly carries global weight, because the U.S. isn't just another participant. It's a major power with military, economic, and political influence that reaches across the world. One of the first things that changes is how other countries respond. Allies begin aligning more closely, watching for signals, and sometimes preparing to support in different ways. At the same time, rival nations start analyzing every move, trying to understand intent, limits, and possible next steps. It creates a ripple effect where even countries far from the conflict start adjusting their strategies based on what the US is doing. There's also the military dimension. The US has the capability to operate on multiple fronts simultaneously, with advanced technology, global bases, and rapid deployment systems. So its involvement doesn't just add more force, it adds complexity. Air power, naval strength, intelligence systems, and coordination with allies all come into play, creating a much more dynamic and unpredictable situation. Beyond the battlefield, the economic impact becomes almost immediate. Markets react to uncertainty, especially when it involves regions tied to energy supply and global trade. Oil prices can fluctuate, shipping routes can be affected, and investors begin to respond to the possibility of prolonged instability. What happens in one region starts influencing economies worldwide within a very short time. Another critical aspect is perception. When the US steps in, it sends a strong signal about how serious the situation has become. It tells the world that this is no longer something that can be ignored or contained easily. That perception alone can escalate tensions further because it raises expectations of possible outcomes, whether it's deterrence, intervention, or something more direct. And then there's the strategic balance. Every move by the US forces other players to reconsider their positions. It's not just about the immediate conflict anymore. It becomes part of a larger geopolitical picture, where decisions are influenced by alliances, long-term interests, and global power dynamics. What often goes unnoticed by the public is that the most critical phase of any potential conflict isn't always the moment when fighting officially begins. It's the period right before that, when everything is being set into place. This is the stage where decisions are still being shaped, options are still open, and multiple outcomes are being prepared for at the same time. It may look quiet on the surface, but behind the scenes, it's one of the most active and sensitive moments. During this phase, military planners are not reacting. They are anticipating. They're running through different scenarios, asking what happens if tensions rise further, what happens if a strike occurs, what happens if allies get pulled in. Every possible situation is being mapped out, and resources are being aligned accordingly. Troops, equipment, intelligence systems, all positioned in a way that allows for immediate response if needed. There's also a level of coordination happening that isn't visible publicly. Communication between military branches, allied countries, and strategic command centers increases significantly. Information is constantly being updated, analyzed, and shared. Small changes in the situation can lead to rapid adjustments in positioning, which is why movements during this phase can seem subtle but are actually very deliberate. Another important aspect is how this phase reduces reaction time. Once everything is in place, the ability to respond becomes much faster. Decisions that might have taken days can now be executed within hours or even minutes. That's exactly why this stage is so crucial. It creates readiness without immediately committing to action, but at the same time, it makes escalation easier if something triggers it. There's also a psychological dimension. Even without open conflict, this level of preparation sends signals to other nations. It creates pressure, uncertainty, and sometimes forces responses from others who don't want to be caught unprepared. In many cases, just reaching this stage can influence behavior because everyone involved understands that the situation has moved beyond normal tension. At the same time, this phase is unpredictable. Because so many variables are in play, even a small incident, something unexpected or misinterpreted, can shift everything very quickly. The environment becomes more sensitive, where actions and reactions are closely tied, and the margin for error becomes smaller with each passing moment.